This week on Worldview, as Nepal's capital went up in flames and the government fell to Gen Z protests, what's next for India's nearest neighbour? Is there a common theme to the protests from Colombo to Dhaka to Kathmandu? And should India worry about a spillover of instability and unrest? Our correspondent Ramya Kannan is there on the ground in Kathmandu. Hello and welcome to Worldview at the Hindu with me, Suhasini Haidar. Now, the news from Nepal has been the biggest story this week as youth protesters took to the streets to protest KP Sharma Oli's government's social media ban. Now, this happened on Monday and few could have expected what happened next. As the numbers surged, led by several groups, including Hami Nepal and others, police opened fire. 19 young protesters were killed, 22 by the end of the day. Within hours, those crowds had turned into mobs. They targeted ministers like the finance minister, Vishnu Paudel, and foreign minister Arzu Deoba, beat up and burned politicians' homes. This was all on Tuesday, and forced Prime Minister Oli and his cabinet to resign. They attacked institutions, buildings, the Prime Minister's home and office, the Supreme Court, the Parliament, all were set on fire. Media offices, Kantipur and Kathmandu post offices as well. They firebombed the private homes of wealthy Nepali citizens, looted shops, ransacked other places. Finally, the army took charge, restored law and order and called for talks, while President Ramchandra Paudel came out to appeal for peace. Ramya Kannan, the Hindu's Tamil Nadu bureau chief, was in Kathmandu at the time. I spoke to her earlier and asked her the basic question. What's next now for Nepal? Are elections a possibility?
Yes, I was speaking to some local Nepali people yesterday, and they say that once the interim government is in place, there will be an election probably 6 to 8 months from now. Of course, it's still in the realm of speculation, but they feel that this time there's a better possibility of going in for a free and fair election, especially this is a case where the youth will be leading them and there is a better chance to eradicate corruption and nepotism as they have been witnessing all these years. So yes, the people are happy that an election might be around the corner.
Ramya, describe some of the scenes of rioting that you've witnessed. How hard is rebuilding Parliament, the Prime Minister's house, other offices going to be?
Yeah, so Hasni, there has been a great deal of arson and damage to public institutions, primarily in this country here. As I see it, there's a great deal of rebuilding to do, not just politically, socially and economically, but also literally, like building from the ground up. A lot of establishments, particularly the Parliament House and the residences, official residences of the Prime Minister and some ministers, even a former Prime Minister have been targeted, as we've heard. Today you can still see spirals of smoke coming up, though it's much better than it was on Monday or Tuesday. In fact, on Monday, the situation was quite calm in certain parts. So when I made my way from the airport to the hotel, there was in fact a traffic jam, and that of course slowly changed, or rather should I say rapidly changed, and curfew was imposed, and then the army came in. But yes, there is a great deal of rebuilding to be done in Nepal.
And of course, the question, hundreds, if not thousands of Indians are stranded there in Nepal. What are the arrangements like for them?
Yeah, it's true, Suhasini, that hundreds of Indian tourists have been stranded. 600 apparently are stranded on the Kailas Manasarovar trekking route. These people have arrived here. Some of them are sick and unwell and in need of urgent medical care, we hear. But there are also tourists, Indian tourists in Kathmandu who are, holding up in hotels and guest houses, hoping for the airspace to open. Thankfully, the airspace has opened up recently, yesterday evening, and the flights are back again in the air. So However, the curfew is still in place, and people are traveling in groups to the airport as the army pickets are in place, and they do flag down vehicles, and they do not want unnecessary movement on the streets.
Ramya Kannan there in Kathmandu, actually there for a conference reporting for us. So what's really going to be next? What we know for the moment is talks with Gen Z protester groups are on to create an interim government that will hold power until elections are held in about 6 months, they say. Thus far, the groups have suggested a number of names. So just let's look at who are likely contenders. Of course, this is being recorded on Friday, and it could actually change in time. But the groups had first circled around Sushila Karki. She's the Chief Justice, known for her anti-corruption and a very strong contender for it. Also, Kulman Ghising, he's the power board chief there, and really turned around Nepal's power crisis. Kathmandu Mayor Balendra Shah, who's a former rapper and singer who cleaned up the city, was seen as that. Also, former Deputy Prime Minister Rabi Lamichhane, formerly a television journalist, an anti-corruption party RSP chief. He had to step down under some murky conditions, also due to his dual nationality. These are choices popular with the younger groups as well. Questions about whether the Nepal Army Chief Ashok Raj Sigdal, who spoke on television on Wednesday, very unusual, actually has ambitions for a larger role. It's unclear for the moment where mainstream politicians are. Only from the CPN, UML, the three major parties there, Prachanda or Pushpakamal Dahal of the CPN Maoist, and the Devas of the Nepali Congress. Remember, all of them have held power for some time in the last decade. Their cadres may actually regroup as well. The dark horse at the moment are the monarchists. Where will they go? They held big protests, if you remember, in May 2025, wanting to bring back the erstwhile royal family. In particular, this young man, Hridayendra Shah, grandson of ousted King Gyanendra, he is Gen Z himself. He's about 23 years old, just launched a popular vlog called Jumla Vlog, which you can see online. In Delhi, Prime Minister Modi held a CCS meeting to assess the situation. Airlines work to restart flights, evacuate Indian tourists, pilgrims, professionals, workers to safety. So let's just take a look at what the underlying causes behind the protests were. Obviously, the trigger, the social media ban on 26 apps, including things like WhatsApp, Twitter, and Facebook. This came months after the government had said that these apps must ban and have local offices in Nepal, and then decided to go ahead and institute the ban. Despite the fact that that ban was reversed within a few hours because of the protests, that was not enough for the protesters. So what are some of the other issues? Economic misgovernance. Nepal, remember, is 170th in the world. GDP per capita, just about 1,400 per person. 25% of Nepal remains dependent on remittances, Nepalis working outside. And the idea that there has been major economic misgovernance inside the country is one of the triggers for the anger as well. Then there's corruption and the multi-coalitions we've seen. Nepal has seen more than a dozen governments in the 20 years of becoming a constitutional republic. This has made many people cynical about politicians. 5 different formations, in fact, we've seen since the last elections in 2022 between Mr. Oli, Mr. PK Dahal, and then Mr. Oli again. Also, many allegations of corruption against the cabinet ministers. Then there's nepotism and privilege that the protesters spoke about. There's a trending thing called Nepo Baby, really targeting the children of these politicians. Much anger was at the moment over a minister who was seen on a TikTok video running over a woman and then just simply driving away. Some of it, of course, was about what's happening in the region. South Asian unrest in Sri Lanka, Argale protests where they said Gota Gogama and then pushed out the president of Sri Lanka. In Bangladesh, the anti-Hasina protesters. All have been young, and some other common threads: anger at populist, authoritarian, nepotistic leadership. The protesters feeling the impact, because they are the youth, they're feeling the impacts of the downturn in economies worldwide, of remittances amid anti-immigration feelings in the West, tourism and export losses as well. Given all that we have seen, what should India now be most concerned about? Of course, the first is security. India has an open border with Nepal, about 1750 kilometers. Nepali citizens, of course, have near national rights in India, apart from really voting and becoming citizens. In particular, this violence comes just before the elections in Bihar, that has the longest border with Nepal, so that's going to be one concern. The second is about the relationship with the polity. Who should the government now be reaching out to? Remember, Prime Minister Oli had most recently a tense relationship with Prime Minister Modi, but these were being repaired. The two leaders had met twice in the last few months on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC summit in Bangkok and at the SCO summit in Tianjin just a week ago. And Mr. Oli was supposed to come to India. So India is going to have to move very quickly to engage with whoever forms the next government there in Nepal. The third question or concern over, was there a foreign hand? Was there a global power at work? And obviously there have been various social media rumors, conspiracies about the US, even about China. For the moment, speculation is rife about just who funded the groups that took to the streets. Although it was clear that the protesters had genuine grievances, were genuinely angry, and their numbers were massive. A fourth concern for India is the lack of stakes in a neighboring country. The fact that New Delhi was caught off guard and surprised underlines how little India, that is most closely linked in a sense to Nepal, how low the stakes were for India and how little it knew about the outcome of those protests. And that's something the government really has to think about. Then there's the Gen Z anger. Remember, many of the Gen Zers who were protesting were growing up around the time the 2015 blockade was being enforced by India, December 2015, and that was months after the big earthquake in Nepal. And they carry considerable anger towards India, as well as the Indian media in particular. In fact, we've seen cases of the Indian media being targeted in Kathmandu right now, being heckled and protested against. Eventually, the greatest concern for India is really going to be the instability in the entire region amidst a time of global economic turmoil. So what's worldview's take? The protest in Nepal is not unlike others seen in the region over the past few years, but the ease with which regimes are being pulled down indicates that governments have failed to connect with the people or to alleviate their problems. As economic issues in the region with lingering effects of the COVID lockdown, the rupture in tourism, export and remittance revenues become bigger problems, India cannot be immune to their effect and so must work on building regional trade and prosperity. Nepal's situation must remind India why the neighborhood matters, how quickly trouble in one country can spread to another, and why India simply cannot be caught off guard. Let's get you some reading recommendations. There's a new book just about to come out. In fact, it would have been launched in Delhi this week had it not been for all these problems. It's called Nepal 2043, The Road to Prosperity by Sujeev Shakya. He's, of course, the author of Unleashing the Vajra, Nepal's Journey Between India and China, which I really think you must read. Another book on the same lines is called All Roads Lead North, Nepal's Turn to China by Amish Rajmulmi. It has a real look at the development inside Nepal and where the problems lie. Then there's, of course, Kathmandu Dilemma. I've spoken about this before. Resetting India-Nepal Ties by Ranjit Ray, who was the ambassador there in Nepal, particularly in the 2015 period. There's Age of Anger by Pankaj Mishra, looking at a slightly larger problem of why these protests are there across the world. And a book about US politics mainly called The Politics of Gen Z, How the Youngest Voters Will Shape Our Democracy by Melissa Deckman. I haven't read this book, but I've heard that it does hold a lot of clues about how this generation is thinking and what causes such anger. But that's all we have time for here on Worldview. We do hope you join us again and log into our website, www.thehindu.com. From the team, thanks for watching.